One major area that League of Legends is suffering in, as far as the professional scene, is not having a default strat book. And I think it's because people are too results-based analysis. And what I'd like to point to first is the idea of algebra. Run with me here. So in algebra, you can solve something very simple. A very simple algebraic equation would be like 5 plus x equals 7. Well, intuitively, we can all know, even without having any knowledge of algebra itself or the fundamentals of algebra, you would know that x equals 2, right? But some people don't know how you even got that answer. That's what results-based analysis is. It's knowing the answer without knowing the process of how to actually get the answer, right? We know as far as algebraic equations, and to solve it, you just subtract 5 from both sides, x equals 2. Right? Pretty fucking obvious. But results-based analysis essentially throws that out the window and just says, I have the answer. Just believe me because I have the correct answer and we both know it's correct. But you just don't know why. So over in Counter-Strike, they have these ideas called defaults. Now, a default is a default strategy that you have where you play out a map and specific key pieces or players play certain areas on the map, right? Like Dust 2, for instance, is the very iconic Counter-Strike map, and a simple default that a lot of people play in pubs, at least back in my day, was you play one person that watches long A, right, through on bomb site A, and then you have another person watching cat as, counter terrorist. You have one person watching middle, you have one person watching B, and then you have one person that floats in between and either goes towards A or towards B. So League of Legends doesn't really have that. And I think it's because people are so obsessed with results-based analysis that they don't actually have the belief or the fundamentals to defend what would be a default strategy. So results-based analysis, essentially in a nutshell, if you've ever wondered, what that kind of term is and like how to break it down in simplistic terms, I would equate it to, say, if you're trying to get like a questionable kill before a major objective, say you're 1v1ing someone right before an objective next to blue buff, and you happen to win that 1v1, and it's a 50-50, right? Even levels, even items, but you win the 1v1. That's a stupid 1v1. If you have better chances fighting at, say you're going for Drake and you have better chances fighting at Drake because your team composition, maybe you have a better front to back team composition and they have a really shitty like split push composition, but they're trying to play front to back. Why not just go with the higher percentage play and fight for the Drake fight 5v5? You have a way better higher percentage to do that. But instead you say, oh, my play was correct because, well, I won the 1v1. That's results-based analysis. That just because a decision actually worked out in your favor doesn't mean it's the correct decision. We can obviously look at in real life things like school, not finishing high school, yet someone becomes a millionaire. Does that mean that it was a good idea for them to not finish high school? No, they just happen to roll, a 6 instead of a 1, but most often they will roll a 1, right? It's just like becoming an esports player. It's a pretty fucking stupid idea, in my opinion, because you're throwing a large gamble and you're hoping that you essentially become this star and you're able to make money in an industry that's failing, right? Kind of like me. So it's a very dumb idea to just go on results-based analysis. Because just because a play works out doesn't mean it's correct. Now, I'd like to then talk about a idea or a default that you can do as far as a strat book that I don't even think a lot of pro teams do in this current day and age, which is look at the wave state of bot lane for Baron. If you're doing a Baron dance over, next to the Baron pit, maybe your bot wave should actually be in a good state to where it's pushing towards the enemy. That would be a good thing because, well, as a default, this would mean that you're putting the enemy in a bad position. They could have one of two solutions to this. Either they can go and catch that wave and then, not try and do the Baron dance and have someone as with TP go back over, and use their TP to get to the Baron fight. So then they get the gold from the bot wave, or they engage on you hard, right? But that puts them in a shitty situation because now they have to have a choice to do, and they have to do it very quickly, and they might fuck it up too. So having a default like that to where your bot wave state is actually in a good position when you're trying to do the Baron dance is probably a good default. But a lot of teams don't do that, and you still see this today. And it's because I think they just don't have fundamentals or axioms or playbooks. And this got me thinking about Yamato Cannon's statement back in 2018 when he was, at Worlds with that famous Vitality speech, where he essentially said, like, yo, we cannot be playing the Korean game because, that's not following our own style. And he's right, because that's results-based analysis. And you can see how rampant it is within the League of Legends professional scene. It is so fucking rampant because all the professional teams from the West all just look at, now it's the LPL as well too. They look at the top teams in the LPL and just see what Milky Way is doing. Or, they look at the top team in LCK and see what Chovy is doing or something. And so they can't think outside the box and solve for X. They can't figure out how to do the algebraic equation because they just don't know how to do fucking algebra. They just know that the answer is 2, right? Because they got it from Chovy. But now, when they get a different type of algebraic equation, they don't know how to solve. And that's the fundamental problem. You can shore a little bit of that up with a default strategy book. Now, look, there is 167 champions in League of Legends. I just checked today. I'm actually surprised that there's that fucking many. But you ever wonder why we have limited champion diversity in the League of Legends professional scene? That's because there's a ton of results-based analysis. People look at the current meta and they say, oh, okay, well, Azir matches up into Corki really well, so we'll pick that, or we'll just pick Orianna. And it's like, dude, there's 167 fucking champions that you can play. And you just happen to decide that, well, I guess we just pick Orianna and Azir and we just go with that, rather than trying to figure out exactly why Orianna or why Azir are actually good in the mid lane in the current meta, and then figuring out what would be a countermeasure to that. Teams don't think about that. They just think of the result and they just look at, oh, okay, well, this is the meta. We'll just keep running with that because it's a safe bet. There's a interesting saying that I've heard recently, which is that no one's gotten fired for going with JP Morgan, right? And as a financial analyst or something, and you're trying to get a business bank account. It's like, yeah, JP Morgan is the safe fucking bet. Why would anyone not want to do JP Morgan? They, have great interest rates or whatever the fuck. But the point is that no one's going to talk shit to you because you went with the trusted institution, right? You went with the trusted LCK or the trusted LPL. How could anyone ever say that your idea was bad? Because, well, obviously that's a great institution and they keep on winning games and shit over in the LCK. So, or in the LPL, Milky Way's fucking dominating. How could Jax be bad? He's always a great pick, right? It's these bad faith arguments which taint the League of Legends pro scene. And it's essentially what it is it's an appeal to authority. That's what it is. That's what results-based analysis is at the very fucking end of the day. And in more simplistic terms, it's kind of like when you get into the post-game lobby in, solo queue or whatever, and one of the players on the team that you lost with says, oh, look at my damaged champions. I was doing so much fucking damage. It's just like, yeah, but you were also playing Ezreal, a poke champion. Why would you not? There's something wrong if you don't have the most, damage dealt to champions. Obviously, that's results-based analysis, and it's just a stupid results-based analysis to begin with. If you just go one step further and you ask, why. That's the stupidest thing about the idea of results-based analysis, is that people don't ask why. They just say, oh, this is the fucking answer, and that's it. That's great. Like, I got great results with this. This is the correct answer. So I think that's the big problem, and defaults can kind of shore that up. And on top of that, it can help you kind of manage percentage risks. And, like, for instance, cross-map plays. It's a good idea to have in your strat book a default for a cross-map play. Say someone is trying to go for like Infernal Drake or something like that. Then if you're the losing team and you have a lower percentage play around the Infernal Drake fight, and you say, oh, well, we're kind of down on gold right now. We lost a couple kills and they're up 2.5K. Why don't you just go and take top tier 1 turret? Because they're not defending it. All 5 of them are over at the Drake pit. Yeah, sure, you lose out on the Drake itself, but instead of trying to fight that and lose even more, why don't you just go get top turret and wait for a higher percentage play? Because that percentage play is going to be really high. You're going to get that top tier turret with almost 100% guarantee. And this is the difference between the LCK teams or the LPL team, more so the LCK teams, is that they balance the risk percentage of, what the play actually is currently on the map. And it becomes complicated when you have default plays and you need to kind of change it up a bit in the interim. And I think that's where a lot of players and people get caught up is they get caught up in the exceptions of a default play. They say, oh, well, this instance, they were doing this and, maybe they were going mid lane. So in fact, we need to match that mid lane. It's like, yeah, but they often wouldn't even be in mid lane. So while yes, you are correct, that is the exception, like, that still doesn't mean that that's, a bad idea to have a default play in your pocketbook in order to go back and have a center. Because a lot of teams, they just go around the rift and they don't know what the fuck they're doing half of the time. In a lot of professional games, you just see this. Someone's roaming around in the fucking jungle as Drake is about to come up, and you're just like, why are you there when Drake is about to be up in 1 minute? And you're up in the topside jungle. There's no reason why you need to be up there. There's no reason to get vision and topside jungle, yet for some reason you're up there, and there are 2 people coming down from there and they just catch you in the jungle and you die. It's like, so default strats are able to kind of rectify that and allow people to have ideas and centers that they can then go back to make a more stable and consistent game. And I think that's why a lot of teams drop a lot of wins in League of Legends, is because they don't have a default strat book. And they don't have a default strat book because they're going off of results-based analysis, because they don't actually have fundamentals or axioms about the game or beliefs about different setups and requirements for different game states on the map. And that's what's really holding back teams.